Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast, where we look at marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. Hi, I am your host, Izzy House, and I am so excited to share this journey with you as we explore the different space industries. On this episode, we will look at how to use conferences as a powerful marketing tool with guest Kevin Brown, Senior Vice President of Business Development for All Points. So lift off in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast. Information relating to our discussion today and links to the video version can be found in the episode show notes on spacemarketingpodcast.com. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. It will help more people reach beyond the atmosphere. Information in this episode is for entertainment and information only. Please consult a professional for your specific situation. Welcome to the new year. This is the first Space Marketing Podcast of 2024. There has been a little break between episodes. I have been working with GSA Spaceport Alliance to get the GSA Spaceport Summit up and rolling, and it will be happening in 2 weeks. Or when you hear this podcast, it will be next week, January 29th. It is a part of Commercial Space Week, and SpaceCom is the pinnacle of that particular Space Week, as well as space mobility with the Department of Defense with U.S. Space Force. So it is a jam-packed week that is going to be something you do not want to miss. So in my book, Space Marketing, Competing in the New Commercial Space Industry, I have an entire section dedicated to events. Events such as conferences, expos, summits, conventions, and congresses can provide a wealth of opportunity to be heard, seen, and interact with individuals within a particular industry. Hosting, sponsoring, vendoring, and speaking, which is one of the toughest things to do at these events, can help build brand awareness and establish you, your company, or your brand as the industry expert, putting your brand in front of the audience that cares deeply enough about the event to show up. Our guest today is establishing his company as an industry leader using conferences, like SpaceCom, as a platform. Our next guest is the speaker for the session, Optimizing Spaceport Infrastructure, which, if you all know, that's my second book, is on spaceports. I love spaceports, and I'm going to make sure that I am at this one. He has some really great news he's going to be talking about. His company is also a sponsor of SpaceCom, and his company has set up a booth at SpaceCom. So our guest is Senior Vice President of Business Development at All Points. His name is Kevin Brown. So welcome to the podcast, Kevin Brown.
Yeah, well, thank you, Izzy. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. And our paths cross in all kinds of different ways. So I'd like to begin with a backstory of how we ended up as space professionals. So my first question to you today is, how did you personally become interested in space?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It was way in the past. So probably 35, 40 years ago. I was really just getting out of college, and my first job. I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, and in my 20s, I realized the field that I was in, which at the time was computer science. I was doing software development in the oil and gas industry. Realized that I could take that career really anywhere in the world. It wasn't tied to any particular place. Software development is something needed everywhere. So I kind of sat back and said, where would I like to live? And I just thought, well, Florida is a great vacation spot, so it'd be kind of cool to live there. So I started interviewing and looking at jobs, and ended up with a job at McDonnell Douglas down at Kennedy Space Center in the 80s. Actually, it's right after the Challenger accident, and haven't looked back since.
It's a great industry. So, and you have been in quite a few different things. In fact, you started a business that was Kennedy Space Center our small contractor, subcontractor of the year, and named one of Florida's top 100 fastest growing companies. So this All Points company is not your first foray into entrepreneurship.
Oh,
And
you've done your research. Yeah, so we started a couple of partners and I spun off a business from McDonnell Douglas in the 90s. The McDonnell Douglas had developed a ground launch control software technology that was being used for some of the experimental rockets. Some of your listeners may recognize the DCX program as a really cutting edge single stage to orbit initiative that at the time the predecessor to the Missile Defense Agency was sponsoring. And we had spun off the technology that was essentially allowed rockets to be launched in the same way that airplanes are flown, with a pilot and a co-pilot. We spun that off into a company called Command and Control Technologies in the 90s. That company is still active and doing very well. It's based just outside Kennedy Space Center.
wonderful.
It was a real highlight of my career. Really enjoyed the entrepreneurial aspect of it, and that is what ended up drawing me to All Points. There is a new line of business that we're standing up at All Points called Spaceport. That is very entrepreneurial. It's essentially a new business within All Points, and really excited about it.
In my particular past, I was part of an incubator when I first started my business back many years ago, and it was a technology incubator. So tell us a little bit about this new initiative, because to me it sounds like an incubator, and I think it would be really great. So go ahead and tell us about this new space prep initiative that All Points is getting ready to do.
Sure. So yeah, the incubator is a good term. All Points, the corporation, is essentially acting as its own incubator and spinning out this company. And Space Prep is not the first one, just by the way. So Phil Moncrief, who's the majority owner and CEO, is interested in creating new businesses, making new ventures, in a variety of industries. Space Prep is one. It's the one that I'm associated with. And it is developing infrastructure at spaceports. Probably the best way to think about it is analogies to airports. If you think back years ago when air travel was expensive and there really wasn't a huge volume, the airport infrastructure was considerably smaller than it is today. But as deregulation lowered the prices of air travel, the demand for air travel just exploded. And the airport infrastructure was just inadequate to handle the demand. So Boeing was turning out more airplanes, and United and Continental and American were selling lots of tickets, but the airports were struggling to keep up with that. So the same thing is happening in the space industry now. For years, the spaceports, particularly in California and Florida, have been adequate to handle the launch traffic. But with the investment and the tremendous increase in in launches and missions, the infrastructure is just inadequate to handle the anticipated launch cadence. So rather than All Points investing in new satellites or new rockets, we are looking at what the Florida workforce really specializes in, which is that ground infrastructure. So we're investing in payload processing facilities and warehouses and storage and control centers and all the spaceport ground infrastructure that's necessary, these new missions. And we'll be leasing and renting and making these various facilities and services available to the satellite spacecraft providers and the launch vehicle providers.
And that's one of the things in my book, Space Marketing Spaceports, is I talk about is that the power of a spaceport is not necessarily the launch. The launch is critical, to be able to do. Our country does not have near enough of spaceports that can actually do launch right now. So that is critical. But let's take that aside. It can become an economic hub for the community. And that's one of the things that a lot of people miss. It's like you look at Houston, and Houston can't do vertical launch. And yet they're becoming a hub with all these facilities surrounding their spaceport. And that inspires the next generation of workforce that's around it. It brings money into the community itself. And it builds up economy that an area that may not have a viable economy will be able to utilize and benefit from. So that's kind of why I'm passionate about spaceports. So I love what you're doing here, and especially, being able to make it to where other businesses can come in and take care of what they need to do, as well as be a part of the space launch industry.
That's right. And it's truly global. Our phase one is focused on Florida, which is where the greatest need is right now. Phase two is California, particularly around Vandenberg, where the demand is going to be even greater than Florida eventually, particularly from the military side. And then phase three is beyond those two bases, other bases in the U.S. as well as worldwide. We think that the spaceport industry is going to continue to grow. And while there are a lot of companies that are interested in building spacecraft and lunar landers and science experiments and satellite constellations, there's not a lot involved in the ground infrastructure. So we see that as a real global business opportunity long term.
I'm excited about what you're doing. And now we understand why you call it all points, because you're going to all points of the industry.
That's right. Right.
So
It's the company actually has a history in logistics. And if you really think hard about this, the ground infrastructure is really nothing more than a very complex logistics problem.
yes, very much so. And it always has been. I mean, you have had to track whatever it is up there, even if it's only Sputnik. You have to track it. So,
Right.
and you have to send messages to it, and ground control is critical. And plus, there's a lot of benefits that come from the space. I mean, every day, if you watch TV, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you're listening on satellite. And so that all needs to be launched up there. It needs to be handled while it's up there, and it can provide a lot of benefits in the consumer market as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's switch over to the conferences real quick. And I want to start off with what is the hardest part about marketing. In many people think is speaking, is getting up on that stage and telling your story. And Jerry Seinfeld talks about how the number one fear is public speaking. Death is number two. So that means that most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So, and it is something I've had to work on as well, because I'm an introvert pretending to be an extrovert. And I went to Toastmasters for many, many, many years to be able to learn how to public speak. And it's an ongoing craft. It's not something you ever say, oh, I'm
Right.
good with that, and let me go on. It's always something you need to develop. So it is one of the most powerful things that you can do to market your company, is because you get to tell your story. And you're getting ready to go on stage at SpaceCom. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about your session that you're going to be speaking on?
Well, sure. I'm right there with you, Izzy, in terms of an introvert pretending to be an extrovert. I think I crossed that bridge about 20 years ago and just said, you just have to do it.
You just have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife and the folks who know me real well would back me up on that. But just going back to the public speaking note, we homeschool our kids, and one of the reasons we do it is because the skill involved in public speaking is something that you develop over time. And we have always integrated that type of skill development into our curriculum. And our kids are very good public speakers, and they don't have that fear. It is something that does not just, it comes naturally to some people, but I think that's more the exception than the rule. Now, as far as the panel goes, yeah, I think you mentioned the title. It's Optimizing Spaceport Infrastructure. The panel is a combination of government and private company speakers who will be discussing the challenges of building and operating and offering multi-user spaceport infrastructure, everything from launch pads, complex high-end infrastructure like launch pads, all the way down to roads and power utilities that are shared. And then from the user perspective, what are the challenges in obtaining and utilizing shared infrastructure as it's allocated to their particular operation? And so the panel will then go back and forth between the users and the providers, discussing challenges, the future of infrastructure development and operations, and how the spaceports might manage that particular enterprise better. I'm looking
That
forward to it.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I've been doing a lot of webinars with Spaceport Kentucky, and we've been talking about what goes into building a spaceport. Because even though Kentucky is in the middle of the country and is not on the coast, we may not be able to launch rockets, but we can sure build them. And so that's kind of my thing for there. And what is the value that you see that speaking on stage at these conferences gives the All Points brand?
Maybe broaden your question up a little bit. Participating in events and conferences like this does bring a lot of marketing value to a company. I've always thought of different modes of participation and something of a hierarchy. The most value, if you stand back and think about going to a conference, how can I get the most value out of what can I do to get the most value out of an event like this? I've always felt that speaking, being a speaker, was the number one mode of participation because it gives you an opportunity to show thought leadership in your industry. If you've been selected amongst your peers to be the speaker, that alone gives you some credibility. And then when you stand up and start speaking about your background and your vision, you're able to share your particular view and insight on the industry. And for those in the audience who align with what you're discussing, are going to see you as a thought leader, and that will lead to follow on business. And if nothing else, curiosity about what you discussed and conversations that could then lead to business deals.
Hold on to your boosters. We will be right back with guest Kevin Brown from All Points after a brief message from our sponsors. Please like and subscribe to the Space Marketing Podcast so you don't miss a thing.
Beyond speaking, I mean, there's other things you can do as well. So, the next most valuable thing is having some type of exhibit, and then there's other modes as well.
We are planning on looking at your exhibit because that's that's what we have next. Is number 2 is vendoring, you being there at the conference. Now, in this world of AI, there's a lot of things that aren't real that we're seeing, and we can make people talk that aren't, but at a conference, you're meeting real flesh and blood people, and it's really hard to fake that. Conferences, in my opinion, are going to be even more critical going forward with AI and all the things and all the technology that we have with that, because you're going to be meeting people one-to-one and you will know that they are real. And it gives you a chance to ask questions and maybe spin off other questions you didn't know you had, and when you're sitting there talking at a booth. So we're going to break away. We're going to go to your booth at SpaceCom, and we're going to actually talk about the different components of it and have like a little mini. So look for that as a bonus material on the webpage for this particular podcast, and we'll go on from there. So the third thing, which you are also doing, is sponsoring. So you're a sponsor for SpaceCom as well. So you want to talk about maybe the value of a sponsorship and how you choose which event to actually sponsor, because there's only a limited amount of funds. Mm-hmm. I don't care what company, if you're Apple, there's a limited amount of funds that you're going to spend on things like this. So how did you choose which conference and why?
Excellent question. These conferences are opportunities to be in customer-rich environments. That's really the main reason for participating. You have a chance to get face-to-face with an entire audience of potential customers, as well as vendors, because there are people there that are trying to sell to you as well. Having meetings and face-to-face conversations is really the most valuable thing you can do there. And speaking, having a trade show booth, having a meeting room, all lead to those kinds of conversations. Now, so why sponsor? The sponsorship, certainly it gets your brand out there, it gets you to the top of the website, and you get visibility. But that's, in my opinion, is not really the best value. The best value is, at least at the larger conferences, the sponsorships tend to get other benefits that aren't immediately apparent, particularly the higher end sponsorships. you'll get better placement for your exhibit booth. For example, you'll have access to some events and panels that may be, invitation only. High-end sponsorships typically involve even customized events. The event organizer will set up a press conference or do a VIP reception where you can really have a lot of control over who's participating, and you have a lot of control over your messaging. All those types of benefits are really unlocked through the sponsorship. That's why we do that. And you were just talking about SpaceCom. So we were a major sponsor of SpaceCom because it is one of the leading space industry trade shows. It's in Florida, so it's close for us. And there is a real focus on both commercial and DoD through the partnership with Space Mobility and the Global Spaceport Alliance, all coming together in Space Week. So it's again, customer rich environment. It's a great place to be exposing our brand and having these kinds of panels.
And one of the things about the audience and the people that are coming to these conferences is that they value what they're going to find. It's not like you're making a cold call and you're irritating somebody. These people are paying their money to come to this event. So they're open to what it is that you're doing. They're curious. They want to know. They want to have these conversations. So it's a completely different dynamic than what other marketing may give you. These people want to know you. Period.
That's right. I mean, you're right. You're paying to attend, and so everyone is coming with the same desires that I just described. Right. I'm looking to network and talk to. So is everybody else. Right. That you wouldn't be participating in these events if you weren't doing that. So everybody is open. It's easy to have conversations with the right folks. It's just a matter of getting deals started and then being good with the follow up to close them later.
Yes, and conferences are about deals as well. So that's where deals are made. So well, alrighty. So to wrap up the conference part, it starts on January 29th with GSA Spaceport Summit, and the next day is Space Mobility with US Space Force, and then it's SpaceCom, and where all the awesome sessions that we're going to have on. The vendor part starts on the 30th, and then the 31st and the 1st are SpaceCom and all the awesome sessions that we're going to do. I'm a speaker on the workforce development panel. I'm a moderator, and so I'm looking very forward to that.
It's also the 50th Space Congress as well.
Yes.
Which is a big deal. We've been doing that event for 50 years. It started in Cocoa Beach way back when I was basically even before I came here. I remember going to what must have been the 10th Space Congress.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was just multiple hotels on Cocoa Beach would host it. You'd go from one to the next to the exhibits and the panels and whatnot. Been doing it for a long time.
I'm going to jump back to one more thing about the public speaking that I was a judge at a debate with some 9-year-olds that were homeschools, and I was amazed at how eloquent that they were as speakers, and they were so far above what most adults even are. So
in a debate setting.
It was a speech contest for 9-year-olds, and there was a debate that were for younger teens, and
right.
I was blown away, and that's one of the things that inspired me to do Toastmasters, was because how powerful are those 9-year-olds going to be when they grow up, that they already know how to get on the stage and public speak.
That's right.
And I learned a lot of tips and techniques about speaking from judging that event. And so I can't say enough, teach your kids how to get on that stage. It will open up doors that they will not have access to otherwise.
300%, for sure.
Yes. So I have 2 questions. One is, where do you see the space industry in the next 10 to 20 years? This space prep building that you're creating is definitely a long view game. And so obviously you have some ideas of what you're going to see in the next 10 to 20.
Sure. We do anticipate space access points expanding within the U.S. and beyond the U.S. as the demand grows. I see it as really the three arms of the industry continuing. That's the military, civil space and exploration, and then commercial. I think of the three, commercial will probably predominate over the next 10 years, but the other two will be significant players as well. We know within the U.S. the Department of Defense is looking very carefully at cislunar space. I think the Mitchell Institute just released a report on how the Space Force strategy is developing around cislunar space and preventing South China Sea type activity from happening out in space. I think that's going to be a very important part of our national security and frankly global security as we move into the next 10 to 20 years, and we have more and more traffic going out beyond geo and into cislunar space and even beyond, as well as the activities on the moon surface itself. I think all of those things are going to become more commonplace, and eventually, I'd say within the next 10 years, space launches are going to be as ho hum as airplane takeoffs. We're
Oh,
going to
one can
see,
hope so.
yeah, we're going to see that, and we're going to see landings. We're going to see things coming back as well, and I think it's going to become quite routine. I think they're just like we have tragedies in the air. I think there are probably going to be accidents along the way. Our society is resilient, and there's a lot in creation that we have yet to explore, and I think the innate human need to explore will never be extinguished, and it's
Right.
exciting to be part of that.
Definitely. One of the things about security that I want to stress is that, we live our lives based off satellites now. And so those satellites need to be protected. If you have any doubt, just ask the Ukraine. Their satellite was knocked out first before they were invaded. And so
Mm,
it's very much something we've got to make sure that our DoD is as strong as it can be, and that our space presence is as strong as it can be. So.
absolutely, absolutely, and I'll tell you, the Space Force is doing a great job having a separate service specifically focused on space. I think has been a real boon to the country.
And it will only increasingly so. So I look forward to the next 10 to 20 years. I think it's going to be amazing. And I'm glad that we're alive during this time to see a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what's really exciting is what are our kids and grandkids going to see?
Oh my gosh, if you go back to when, I mean, I remember when cell phones happened. We had beepers before then, and even before then, you had a landline, and if somebody called you and you did not pick up, there was nothing you could do about it. You had to call another time. So, we've seen telephone, we've seen, I mean, just if you look back on just our short lives and what we've seen is going to be incredible what they see.
So when do you think space tourism and travel to space stations by the common person is going to happen? How many years in the future
Well,
do you think?
that's an interesting thing. I actually did a lot with the Space Tourism Conference. The 2021 was a big year. We had Branson with Virgin Galactic going up. We had the SpaceX crew that, with Jared and Inspiration 4.
Mhm.
That was amazing. We had the the rocket go up with Blue Origin that year. It looked like things were really changing. And space tourism has had a really tough couple years.
Yeah.
And I think we've taken a step back on space tourism, but I believe that it will become something that we do with space perspectives. And there's a couple other balloon companies all around the world in Spain and Japan. I think that we're going to see that become commonplace, the space balloons especially. And I personally think that it is vital to space to have space tourism. So I want you to think about tourism in general, in with airplanes. And we go to another country, we get to experience their culture, we get to meet other people, and the world becomes a smaller place, and we have more friends on it. And and we appreciate the different cultures. When if you are just stuck in a little bubble, you don't realize how much value all those other cultures bring to the world and paint the world in beautiful colors. So by having space tourism, we're going to be able to see just how beautiful our planet is. And maybe when we come back down, we take better care of it. So I believe space tourism is a vital step, and I can't wait for it to actually get some legs and really start to move.
Right, right. It is an exciting aspect. And the space tourism into space is one aspect, but the other aspect is suborbital type travel, right? Point to point on the Earth. We know
Yes.
Space Force is looking at that for uh, defense purposes, but there's also obvious commercial applications as well. I think that's going to grow out of this industry too.
Yep.
New York to Japan in 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right,
That's a game changer for sure. For sure. So, and that and hypersonic, supersonic, suborbital, I mean, it's just, yeah, we're living in a really awesome time. We're right on the cusp of all these technologies getting ready to really shoot out and be something.
right.
So,
Well, that's the power of just our economy. We've got so
yes.
many innovators that are developing new ideas, new techniques, new technologies, new operational concepts, and most of them will not succeed, but the few that will change the game.
And I like what you just said there. Most will not succeed. In our world, if you look at small businesses, the percentage rate of those that succeed is very small. So when you look at the space and, we've seen a lot of things like Virgin Orbit, they went bankrupt but really we don't see, I mean, business is hard and space is hard. And when you combine the two, you know, you're going to have things not succeed, but that's just a part of business as well. And it's having the and looking at how a business can be profitable and sustainable. That's the beauty. And obviously with all the experience that you have with creating businesses, you have found that secret sauce. So kudos to all that.
Well, what's exciting about it is, you know, the infrastructure play is is interesting because it really doesn't matter who wins. Whoever wins is going to need the infrastructure, right?
Right.
So that's the appealing part of our entire business plan.
And cyber is also a part of your all points as well. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon either.
That's
So,
right. I mentioned that the Space Prep was not the first incubated spinoff from All Points. The first one actually is a cyber company that's doing very well, called Mars Suite.
and the more of them, the better. So definitely. So, okay, my last question that I always ask is what thoughts do you want to leave our audience with today? What do you want them to mull over as they go through the day and say, I didn't realize that that was a thing?
Well, let me see here. So this is a marketing podcast, right? Uh, so I would suggest think about return on investment. One of the challenges that we have in marketing is developing some type of believable, real notion of what is the return, what is the value of any particular marketing investment, right? Um, and there's different ways to do it. I've heard, and I've seen many different ways. But I think as you're going about your daily business and you're looking at different marketing modes, different channels, different branding techniques, think about what the value of each of those are, and try to focus and prioritize on those that have the highest value back to your organization. And as general guidance, the way I like to think of this is which of my marketing techniques is going to lead to the most sales. So link marketing and sales and use that connection as a way to prioritize your marketing activities.
That's a good one. And because at the end of the day, the one key indicator of success is did it actually make money for the company?
That's right. Revenue growth and bottom line growth. That's what we're interested in.
Exactly. And a lot of your marketing techniques, you can say, okay, this marketing thing, maybe it doesn't make a lot of money, but the thing is can you twist it? Can you turn it a little bit to where not only is it not costing you as much, but maybe it even makes you a little. So, just be creative with your marketing and say, how can I do this to where it doesn't cost as much and it makes me money? So, but
Excellent.
thank you so much for coming today, and I can't wait to see you next week.
I appreciate the invitation. Yeah, we definitely look forward to it.
A special thanks to Kevin Brown from All Points for sharing his journey to space. Be sure to check out his links listed in today's show notes. Please like and subscribe to the Space Marketing Podcast to help us get the word out about this incredible, inspiring industry of space. I hope that you have found this podcast useful for your journey as you reach for the stars.